kind of filming a little bit of extracts and things like that. Plus, she's going to give me a half-hour warning that I have to get to Q&A. Yeah, so it's always good to have a timekeeper on the side, like boxing matches. It's always good to have someone there. It is so good to be back in Texas, and I've struggled. I flew in on Monday night, Tuesday morning. I've struggled with the heat, but it's wonderful to see our grandchild, who's young. It's wonderful to be back in this church as well, where I was a member. I mainly worshipped in the Cox Chapel, but I did go to the sanctuary quite a lot as well. And I had a ministry outreach to the senior centers here. And I'll be very honest with you, it was this church that kind of mentored me and gave me and nurtured me and gave me the confidence to stand up and to do a lot of these things. So many people say to me, however do you do it? However do you stand up in front of people? Well, partly it's because of this church and the great nurturing that I had in my vocation and my ministry. And so it's good to be back here, and it's good to be back close to SMU, because I was in the Perkins School of Theology, and I still got my clergy card for the Bridwell Library. So this month, if I can ever get some time away from shopping and speaking, I might even closet myself over there for a few hours and get some rest. But anyway, it is so good to be back in Texas. And not only did this church nurture me, but also, so all of you nurtured me in your own different ways, but also C.C. Young, the stories of everybody out there. And I first started doing this at C.C. Young on a quite regular basis, because as a chaplain I wanted to get to know the people there in a less formal atmosphere, or rather than one-to-one, and it was through Q&A. And it worked out very well. And then I took it to Richmond College and other senior centers throughout Dallas. And so I also have fond memories of working for Christ Foundry, where I was an associate pastor, and going out on the road to all the Methodist churches in Dallas. What an education that was, speaking every Sunday in a different Methodist church and getting to know the circuit. So it is so good to be here. The other thing I would mention is, if I can get my notes in the right order, can I? No, I can't. Well, anyway, I know what I'll do. I can remember what it was. I want to tell you, coming from London, that Britain is open for business. And despite, and I have a lot of respect for the President, but despite his unhelpful remarks when he went there, and we all say things sometimes we don't really mean, about Britain getting to the back of the queue because he wanted to negotiate with Europe and all that kind of thing. Europe and the USA are in trade negotiations, and they're not going very well. They're not going anywhere. So Britain is open for business. The special relationship is still there, it's still deep, although we all have long memories of the 18th century, I know that. And as a dual national, as an American citizen and a British citizen also, I have great love for both my countries, and it's my sincerest wish that that special relationship over the next few years really cements itself, and both countries who have great traditions, go on to do even greater things in the world, not just for the benefit of their own people, but for the benefit of the whole world as well. So having missed the card there, that doesn't matter. So my subject today is Maggie Smith, and Richard and I, when we debated what to put on a few months ago when I was last here, I offered to put on Maggie Smith or the BBC production, which is in production now, called Black Diamonds, which is trying to counter Downton Abbey, which it's a very good book, Black Diamonds, I recommend it to you, has a Methodist ministry in there, and it talks about the coal mines in the north of England and the richest family in England and their family tale through the years. It was kind of an upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey, but it has a little bit more grit in it because it has working people in it as well. And so he couldn't make his mind up. I remember Richard very well. He said, well, what shall we do? Shall we do? He said, I'd like to do both, but what should we do? Oh, well, Maggie Smith's very popular. We'll do Maggie Smith. And so it's turned out. You're here, and that's great. All right. So without more ado, let's cut to the chase. I have based this presentation on this excellent book by Michael Coveney called Maggie Smith, a Biography. It's ready, available in all good bookshops. I don't get any percentage off from it. I don't know Michael Coveney. But he asked Maggie Smith if he could do a biography of her. She's never done a biography. And she agreed. And his format was to talk to all the people through the years that have known Maggie from the films and from the pictures you have of all the films and her life and her family, and sketch what their impression of her was. And also to talk to her a little bit as well. But she's a very busy lady, so that wasn't possible all of the time. And she's also a very personal person as well, likes her privacy. So that made it a little bit difficult. But so what I'm going to try and do is endeavor to acquaint you with the most versatile of our great actresses. When I say our, I mean Britain and America. It's almost interchangeable, really, because everything from the West End goes to Broadway, and everything from Broadway goes to the West End. I thought Richard described her very well in the promotion of this. Such a great talent, an actress, a star who can play comedy, tragedy, and particularly I'd like to know, which I do in all my talks, acquaint you more with her childhood. You see, our childhood forms us in so many ways, and so many ways it still haunts us as well. I'm going to talk quite a bit about her childhood and how she came to this position. And maybe that's a story you don't know so well, because she never talks about it really. We'll come to that part in a moment. Even when she comes to Dallas, I'm going to talk about her interview with KRA in Dallas a few years ago, a year or so ago. So that's the format. And the rest of the format is this. I'm into rhetorical questions like politicians, so I'll pose questions and then I'll answer them myself. And it's kind of like, you remember when you were at school, you were always putting your hand up to answer the question all of the time, and the teacher said, oh, well, I'm coming on to that now, So what I'd like you to do is hold your fire a little bit on that. I don't mind the odd interruption, that's fine, because it keeps me on my toes. But for the sake of fluency, we'll leave it to a generous time for Q&A in the end. And I love those Q&As because so many things come out. So if you have any memories of Maggie Smith, movies you particularly like, observations, comments, questions, let me have them, because I do this talk a lot, and it further enhances my knowledge. And every time I do this, I learn from someone anyway, whatever presentation I do. So that's the format then. So let's begin. What words or phrases come to your mind? This is the first rhetorical question, by the way. So we don't need that. What words or phrases come to your mind when you hear the name Maggie Smith? Do you think very funny, brilliant, great and versatile actress, film movie star, has 2 Oscars, Downton Abbey, classical actress, Shakespearean, the Prime and Miss Jean Brodie, which is a particular favourite of mine. I saw it when I was coming in. Some of the movies now, Prime and Miss Jean Brodie, Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, Lady in a Van. Richard said to me his favourite was My Old Lady, and I wasn't quite that familiar with it. I watched it, but had to go and look it up last night, so because I never know what people are going to say. But what do we really know about her? What do we really know about her? In recent years, she's had a phenomenal success, as we all know, not only in Downton Abbey, but also with a younger audience, Harry Potter. So she's been in the Harry Potter movies as well. She did disappear a little bit in the 70s, and with that disappearance, she came off the profile a little bit, and she moved to Canada, where she joined the classical company at Stratford, Ontario. At the same time, she had a joint career in Hollywood, so from spells resting between performances there, she went to Hollywood. And that period was very good for her because it built extensively on her already very successful career at the Old Vic and the National Theatre. But like all great vaudevillians, and that's actually what Maggie is, you're familiar with the term vaudeville, I know. One of the great traditions of England, going back to Charlie Chaplin and Cary Grant as well, and Maggie Smith, is that our vaudevillians were brought up in an age where they learnt their trade at the theatre and the music hall. And they learnt it all off, and that was their best. And although they went to drama school and all that kind of thing, they learnt it actually on the stage with the people there. She obviously is brilliant at comedy. One personal thing about her is that she has a very ghastly and depressing view of the world. And she's a bit prone to it. I don't know, let's face it, nowadays, who wouldn't have been a bit disposed towards that? But she never wants to talk about politics, she never wants to talk about her faith. Although we'll talk a little bit about that later on, because I always put something about faith in all my talks, so we will cover that, and if I forget it, challenge me at the end, because I might just do that. But undoubtedly, she's obsessive at work. She's a workaholic. In London recently I did this, and when I went in there, the groups, I started talking, I said, are you looking forward to this? And I've got all these beaming faces back saying, yes, she's our age. You know, there was anybody under 80 in the whole room. Yeah, she's our age. Of course we're looking forward to this. We want to know what it's all about. She's undoubtedly a great actress, moving seamlessly. This is her great talent. Moving seamlessly from comedy through to tragedy, sometimes within a paragraph or a couple of sentences. And that's a great, great, great acting skill. She rarely, as I said, appears on TV as herself, you know, being interviewed, doing the round, you know, the Saturday night interviews and all that thing. She doesn't like doing that because she's a shy person. Or she's, you know, she likes to keep herself to herself. She's not that shy. But she likes to keep herself to herself, you know. She likes the inner territory of life, as it were. So she remains a bit of an enigma. She sometimes gives guarded interviews for the press, and these are all gone over in the book. And I was here about a year ago, and she was promoting Lady in a Van. Of course, she has to go out and do interviews then. And I heard her for 1 hour on KERA, another great institution you have here. I miss public radio here, and I miss public television as well. Although BBC's not bad. And it was actually torturous listening to her, the interviewer trying to get information out of her. She just didn't really want to talk too much about herself. So it's a good job that Michael Coveney, who's a very respected drama critic, has done all this research. He's also been a curator of all her films, and also her husband, who, did you see her husband on the stage in Room with a View just now? He was the artist in the school, the art teacher. That was her husband. His name was Robert Stevens. He was later knighted after he did a magnificent King Lear in London. She doesn't like to talk a lot about herself. So let's turn to, now you can refer to the, I'm not a person who likes lots of visual aids. I like to do it old school way with handouts. So you've got the handout, you've been perusing them. We're going to go through her life now. And we're going to start with her childhood.